the Morning Show. We're coming to you today on WJOP-LP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9 and on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm delighted to have today's topic be giving you all an update on how the resettled Afghan families are doing. And to that end, I have three magnificent ministers here. Reverend Rebecca Bryan of First Religious Society, Unitarian Universalist Church is here. Welcome, Reverend Rebecca.
Hi, Mary. Great to see you again.
It's good to see you again. And Reverend Christopher Nye is here. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here.
And thank you so much for visiting the show.
Yep.
And Father Jarred Mercer is here from St. Paul's Episcopal Church. Welcome, and thank you so much for taking time to visit, Father Jarred. Now, all three have been hosting Afghan families, but we should give a shout out to another magnificent minister who's not here. And would you tell us about the fourth parish that's been hosting Afghan families?
Sure, absolutely. So it's West Newbury Congregational Church. It's actually lay leaders there, particularly Beth Wilkinson.
Wonderful.
Wilcoxon has been really doing an incredible job with support of her other members and friends.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a real collaboration then. Mm-hmm. And I know the community is going to be very interested in finding out how things are going. It's been just about almost exactly a year since Reverend Rebecca and Father Jarred were on the morning show to talk about the initial introduction of the families to our community. And so, well, let's just start in at the question, so how are things going? How have things progressed over the past year for the resettled Afghan families? What's been going well? Let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things have been going very well. I mean, the children really are enjoying and thriving in the schools. The schools have been amazing at welcoming them, providing new resources, even making new hires, and really supporting them to the best that they can, as well as other organizations like the New American Association of Massachusetts is really involved with us, and they've done some work in helping the schools also. There are difficulties, of course, language barrier, different levels of education and things like that are tough, but the kids are playing youth league soccer in town, and basketball. Some are doing wrestling. Other high schoolers have run track or cross country at the high school as well, and so they're finding ways to really plug in, which is fantastic. Some of the older teens are also working, as well as the parents and local businesses in Newburyport and surrounding areas, and so I think there's many ways in which they've had a sort of successful resettlement here, though it's still in process, of course, and it takes time.
One of the things I really want to lift up and highlight too is for the mothers, the women, and what they've been doing with establishing their own businesses in sewing, and with the support of NAM and people there, and community members who are helping with the children while that's happening. But it's just so exciting to see these women really be empowered and earn money and share their talents and gifts with the sewing and the crafts. And
so there's an entrepreneurial spirit at work.
Should lift that
That's
up.
exciting.
It's very exciting.
And it's called the Afghan Women's Workshop. And it is through,
wonderful.
As Reverend Rebecca mentioned, NAM, that's the New American Association of Massachusetts, and so they're helping to support this new micro business for the women. And they've been going to new craft fairs around New England.
Yeah, that's
area.
brilliant.
One at the senior center, right?
Yeah, there was one here. Yeah.
It's right here.
Wonderful.
Beautiful things that they're creating. I mean, they're really creative.
And I can only imagine it must make them feel really good to be able to use their own skills that they brought with them and to start a business and make money and have that kind of entrepreneurial place in the community, in the same way that you were talking about sports for the young people. And that sports is its own community, and so that struck me as a wonderful way for these young people to feel like they're making a contribution to their team, and they're finding a way to establish a community. Sports communities are generally pretty strong. So that's really wonderful. Glad to hear it.
We were together in a meeting, I don't know, month and a half ago, and it dawned on us that we were approaching the 1-year anniversary of the arrival of the Afghans, and this kind of moment of silent awe fell over this, the chatter of all these business discussions, and we kind of all reflected. On the one hand, it felt like they have all just arrived. On the other hand, it feels like they've always been part of our lives.
Wow,
because
that's
there's been
telling.
such like a depth of connection.
There's been a real
among so
integration.
many people.
In other words, that's exciting. That's really wonderful.
And I think the community feels the same way
Yeah.
at large. I mean, this is what I'm hearing very similar things from people in the community. Like they've helped us so much become so much richer, and they feels like they've always been here. They're just a part of the city.
I think that's something really to lift up too on 2 points. One is the amazing community of volunteers and people who have stepped up to do all kinds of things from the beginning with donations, whether they were monetary donations or items or whatever, to daily English lessons from just people in the community helping to teach English in the homes, and other people giving rides places or helping with doctor's appointments, all kinds of things, helping in the schools. So
getting their license,
helping them get their license and practice driving and stuff and all of that.
So exciting.
Yeah, there has to be, between people who have given, people who are active and volunteering or have been active, and just people who've got to know them on their sports team or in their workplace or whatever at school. There's a few thousand people presumably, very connected to, and so I think it's shifted what it means to live in this community, right? I mean, this is just a part of who we are now, and I think that's very powerful.
Well, that's a real gift then to the Newburyport community, to have the opportunity to do good and to be helpful and to connect. And then it's a real gift because it sounds as though it's brought, lots and lots and lots of Newburyporters together to feel like they're doing something meaningful, and they're expanding the definition of community to include resettled newcomers. So I think that sounds profound.
Yes, agreed.
So that's wonderful.
We should say too that the fathers also all have jobs, and some of the families, like Chris's, have apartments.
Right.
There.
So
Yes.
there was a family that stayed at our church for a period of several months, and in the late spring they found their own apartment, and
That's
have been,
amazing.
been,
No one does that.
settled into their own space.
That's miraculous.
Well, yes, there are many ways. There have been many miracles that have been involved in this entire process of things that, if you just looked at the hard facts and the numbers, you would say none of this could ever have been done.
Yeah.
And
Right.
yet the result of so much goodwill and effort and care that's made these things possible. So.
Well,
Absolutely
I'm
true.
really delighted, and I must say surprised, to hear that, because I know that housing was one of the biggest, probably still is,
Continues
to
to
tell
be.
us challenges,
So,
because
this-
it's hard for anyone to find an apartment in this
largely,
area, especially an affordable one.
I think Father Jarred's going to go into this, but it largely has to do with the size of the families.
Yeah,
right? And so the 3 families that remain in our 2 churches are large.
Yes.
10 and 11 members each.
One of 9 and 2 of 11. So it's this is the hardest piece, and
Yes.
so to follow on the back of all these things about successful resettlement, the most central, I think, significant item for their resettlement is housing and permanent housing, and that's the one thing that seems to constantly escape us, no matter how close we get or what avenues we go down. There are some promising ways forward that we're working on, which we hope will reap fruit soon. But it's been a constant effort over the past year, working with other nonprofits, even working with state and federal governments to try to figure out solutions. And I think the key thing is that for these large families, there aren't solutions, right? And so trying to find creative ways, to make this happen, right? There's no sort of walking into agency in town or something, realty group, and just looking and finding something, right? Because
Right. Do you
it's
have a
just
listing
not-
for a family of 11?
Yeah,
and
that's
not
right,
in Newbury. And of course,
Not
that's part of the
anywhere. Yeah,
challenge
not
too,
anywhere.
because they're going to schools here, their communities here, the volunteers that they know, the people who are teaching the English are here, and yet Newburyport is famously,
and each other, right?
Yes,
And
and each
they
other,
have
of course.
Each other
Yeah.
and families that come from other places here to visit and to be here, and it really has become their community.
Of course. And so
And
you don't
even-
want to disrupt that.
Yeah, you don't want to, but also there aren't solutions
Yeah.
other places as well. And this is what I think it's really important for people to know, that there's been such a sort of crisis point with so many who have come at once. So the Afghan evacuation by the U.S. government, the federal government brought them to the states, and they were distributed throughout different states, landed different places. A few thousand here in Massachusetts, but at the same time, with so many tragedies happening around the world, whether it's climate change or natural disaster, whether it's war, oppression, famine. So there are people coming from all over.
Ukrainians, Peruvians,
Ukrainians,
Venezuelans.
yes.
I mean, there's no shortage
Yeah,
of
Syrians
desperate
still,
people trying
Haitians.
to. Yeah.
So you can't drop 10,000 people or something in a year in the same neighborhood.
Yes.
And so people look to neighborhoods that are have traditionally, where people resettled, like Lowell and other places. There are people living in hotels in Lowell because there's no housing, right? So actually resettlement agencies have now been strategically looking at other places like Newburyport and Ipswich and Topsfield, and resettling people in communities that haven't traditionally done so, because it's necessary. Like everyone has to step up and play their part. Because the just rapid expansion of the need.
The numbers are staggering.
The numbers are staggering, and and they're going to grow every year.
Which means that we all need to share responsibility for finding creative solutions.
Yeah.
Because they need homes and they need communities, and the need is probably only going to get worse.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm glad to hear that you're working on solutions, and we all have to cross our fingers and just hope that there's some way to keep the community together, but also find, what did Hemingway say, a clean, well-lighted place for people to land in. Now, you mentioned, I was curious, I wanted to ask you about how employment was going, and it sounds as though that's going well. So are they finding, we talked about the entrepreneurial spirit of the women, and, that sounds fantastic. What about other kinds of jobs? Have people been able to find work related to the work they were doing at home, or have they had to retrain, or some of both?
Yeah, I think some of both. There's been definitely some retraining.
Yeah.
So you
Go ahead.
Well,
speak to that.
the father of the family that we supported, we learned that he had trained as a welder in Afghanistan and had done welding work, and so he was hired first as a welder and now is working as a machinist in the industrial park, and takes every hour of overtime he can possibly get. Still depends upon rides from volunteers to get to and from work, or he rides his bike when it's not bitterly cold outside.
He won't be riding it the next few days.
Not the next few days, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So,
And the father with Missouri family is actually, it's more of a retraining, and so he's very, very, very motivated and working in Raleigh and learning to be an auto mechanic.
Fabulous.
Has been so well received there.
Wonderful.
And really learning all the time, and then the eldest son had been at Market Basket and is now working in pizza delivery. So very motivated.
Those are all fields that aren't going to go away.
Yeah, that's right.
We're always going to want pizza. And our cars are always going to break down, and something's going to need welding.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then the family from West Newbury, Congregational, is also working as an auto mechanic and training in that. And then the two families of St. Paul's, one is a painter with a local painting company and painting houses, and then the other has been working at Anna Jake's.
Oh, great.
There, and is able to walk to work there when the weather permits to, or it's getting right. But has just gotten a better job with better pay at Governor's Academy
Oh,
as well,
excellent.
starting there. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Well, there's been such a labor shortage in so many different
And they're
fields.
so motivated. Yeah.
So it's a beneficial convergence, I guess, that they're in need of the jobs and that employers are very much in need and willing to train. And so at least they had something going for them. So that's really great. I'm really glad to hear that.
And at Chino's in Raleigh, where they've hired Mohammed Mazari, the owners there really felt that it was also an opportunity to give back themselves and support this
Right.
family, understanding what they went through and how it was related to our own government. And so it's been really beautiful. And so, there are lots of intersecting things, lots of wins.
Well, and it's inspiriting to learn about good people doing good things these days, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure is, which abounds in this situation and
Right.
topic.
Yes.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, that's really inspiring and inspiriting to hear about. Tell me a little bit more. I know that there's large numbers of volunteers every day doing different kinds of things, but I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about just different ways that the community has been engaging with helping the families to resettle and build their independence and find homes and build lives. So,
Who wants to go?
Yeah, any of us, I think, can probably jump in on this. So I mentioned a few things earlier on. There have been people since they arrived giving daily English lessons at home. So they get it at school or they get it other places. They get it through the adults who aren't in school, obviously, through different organizations as well, classes and things for English. But, supplementing that with, just them with a teacher. People are daily giving rides and help to doctor's appointments and checkups, and that's a huge thing.
The medical care has been critical,
immense.
helping them really get, and they've been getting and receiving, thanks to both providers and volunteers, the care they've needed, from everything from dental to, in all the realms of
and
that.
the kids too have been able to function as normal kids here, right, and be able to get to things and do things because volunteers, teammates, parents, or coaches, or whatever, or some just volunteers from the churches too, or even us, if we're free to give rides to, soccer practices and games and basketball, and birthday parties, with friends from school, and, I don't think they've really lacked for anything like that in the same way my kids wouldn't, because I would take them to something. And I think that's a very meaningful.
Yeah, there's been kind of accompaniment for every aspect of daily life as folks who came as strangers are learning how to navigate life in the United States and in Newburyport, and everything from the complications of social service bureaucracies to be able to access benefits or similar issues for immigration status to the things that we take for granted, like how do you swipe a card at the grocery store, and how do you make the right choices about what food to buy for your family?
What's Venmo?
And and where is there a halal butcher? Where we can buy the foods that are culturally meaningful and appropriate to us.
That's right.
Yeah.
At the State of the City that had just happened last week, near the closing of his remarks, the father from the family staying with our church was up in the balcony with a few of our volunteers, and the mayor referenced the Afghan families and the support of the community, and he just beamed. That 1 minute, part of that speech, just, and to me that was the moment that sort of exonerated everything we're saying. All the people that are involved in endless ways, drives to the mosques and to the hall market and on and on and on and on. It's just remarkable. I think as we think about now this housing and moving forward, and there's even things really underway around how we might form in some sort of a nonprofit way for ongoing support with these families and other refugees, the needs are going to also expand. into other areas. So people who are interested in the nonprofit organization or fundraising or legal advice or marketing and the things that are going into that. As we see this as something that we're committed to as a community, sort of in perpetuity. Again, not just for these families, but
But in developing a structure then.
That's right.
To be able to.
Rather than,
that's right.
Because you found that there's an interest and there is an engagement.
Yes.
There's a connection that people are finding very meaningful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't want to let that dissipate.
That's right.
And the need's only going to grow, as we've been saying, right?
And so I think, for the reasons, both of the need growing and the momentum that's here, but also we've been, working collectively in partnership already, but it's the same time, they're sort of disparate efforts, like at different churches, and so forming an organization together, a partnership officially, will help to not reduplicate work or efforts and things, and be able to be better organized to get things done more efficiently and to help more efficiently. As Reverend Rebecca said, look toward the future. I mean, there could be a Ukrainian or a Venezuelan family arriving next month.
I know.
Right, and so who knows what that's going to look like, and so so having that organization is going to be huge, I think.
Yeah, I think it'll make things more efficient and more effective, and you can prevent. You've learned what to look out for, and you can start figuring out the housing problem.
Right. Well, and
that's going to be ongoing.
Right. So it's an ongoing of all these daily efforts and our recognition of this housing for the remaining 3 families, but really all 5 of them for permanent. Really has to be solved. It needs to be addressed. So we need help.
And I think, I think we need help, and I think as a nation, as a world, we need help. I mean, these, the numbers are increasing, and necessarily so. I mean, there are, I think, 100 million forcibly displaced people in the world right now. It's 1 in 78.
And
so,
in addition to the political problems, there's the climate problems.
That's right. And some estimates are as high as just climate change alone. So just climate refugees alone by 2050 could be 1.2 billion. So we're talking about 1 in 78 to 1 in 7.
I mean, it's...
And so the numbers are... And I think that if we don't act now, if there are currently exactly 0 housing programs, for instance, for forcibly displaced people in the country, we're just so radically unprepared. And so if we don't start establishing and get creative and establish new solutions now, the future will be grim. But it doesn't have to be grim. If we can set up infrastructure and systems and structures which make sense of this support that we can give, particularly around the housing piece, we could be looking at a much brighter future.
Yeah, we can be better prepared rather than totally overwhelmed.
Exactly.
So, Well, it's a different kind of question that I wanted to ask you, because on occasion I've tried to imagine what it would be like to be just suddenly displaced totally from everything that was familiar to me, and have to go to a place where I didn't speak the language. I'd lost my home. I didn't have a job, so I couldn't be independent the way I'm used to feeling, and I can't imagine it. I really can't. And so I was curious to ask you, how do you find, what are the strengths? What's the resilience? They sound like very resilient people, and just what kind of emotional experience have people had? How are they feeling about coming to the United States, to Newburyport, and readjusting to everything?
Well, they've lost a lot, and I have to say, I mean, I've never seen such both ands happening within human beings, of such gratitude, such joy, such love, and laughter and play and caring for one another, and I shared this little story where we were handing out candy for Halloween outside of the church when everyone on Pleasant Street is doing this. So the mom at our parish hall sees me and a few parishioners out there. Next thing I know, she's coming out with a tray of tea, right? Because she's very, this is how they are.
Oh,
very
gosh.
concerned we'd be standing out in this cold weather and we need a cup of tea. And, right, the losses that they have sustained and the traumas and the family they have remaining and have lost some of it through death while they've been here, from tragic circumstances that are just as you've said, unimaginable. The women gather on a weekly basis thanks to a wonderful volunteer and a few of them, and they're able to share those things with each other, and I think
that's
has
good.
been a lifeline.
Yeah, it's really
Absolutely.
been,
And it's
really
different.
formative for
You,
them.
you need people who've been through what you've been through and can touch those emotional chords. And I think that's something very healing
Yes.
about that. So I'm
Yeah.
glad they have each other.
Yes.
Yeah, and that both and Reverend Rebecca put it so beautifully that the extremes really, and everything in the middle, right, of this both and to be such joyful, resilient,
Yeah.
enormously strong people, but at the same time to live with this trauma forever that we cannot fathom. I mean,
Yeah.
there was one in the middle of the night, one of the fire alarms, smoke alarms, just misfired. Something went off for no reason.
We all dread that.
Right? Yeah, it just for no reason just went off, and it just needed to be replaced,
Yeah,
right? Whatever. In the church, and so I was there, calling in the middle of the night and texting and trying to figure out what's happening. The fire department had to come and turn it off, whatever. So, and it was fine in the end, but the two of the youngest kids were scared beyond measure, not just because of the sound of a fire alarm, but because they woke up in the middle of the night
Yeah.
thinking that the Taliban was coming to get them.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
This is the kind
Yeah.
of
Trauma.
trauma
That they live
Yeah.
with.
that,
That's right.
that
Those
will
triggers.
be with them
Yes.
forever,
Yeah.
and
That's right.
that we just can't imagine.
Yeah.
And family members and friends that didn't get out
Yeah.
are living with this on a daily basis, some even on the run, and this has been in the news and all kinds of things, and some new measures for particular people, so parents or spouses or children who are children under 18 or something like that, who are left, they're trying to find ways to get out, but there are brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins.
Yeah.
Mothers.
And mothers, and it's
Yeah.
I think the attentiveness to the trauma and like the efforts among the women to build community and share each other's stories has been part of what's made this effort so powerful and special. But one vignette that captures the challenges of it for me is that the mother of the family that we hosted gave birth to a baby in the fall, which was a delightful, absolutely
Yes.
delightful moment. And yet I was there when she was on video chat with family back home. And so, welcoming new life and expanding family, and yet only being able, a very tenuous tether to, the family back home,
Yeah.
through a video chat. And
Yeah.
again, it's so hard to put yourself in that place and imagine what that must have felt like.
Yeah. Well, thank you for those descriptions. Filling in clearly the emotional impact is powerful, and the loss and
Yes.
and grief is a cyclical emotion. I don't think it ever goes away entirely. It just shows up in different ways at different times. Because having a new baby is a wonderful, miraculous thing, but you're going to be reminded that you're not home having the baby, and that family members are not, that would have been there to celebrate that birth, are not going to be there. So it's an ongoing, enormous emotional challenge that impressively they're all rising to
Yes.
and finding ways amongst themselves and with the community of volunteers to cope and go ahead and build good lives for themselves here,
Yes.
which is extraordinary and wonderful.
Yes. Every stable, safe day adds to that for them.
Yeah, yeah,
That's nice.
Every day.
yeah. Which is what we all want, isn't
That's
it?
right. And deserve.
Yes, yeah. And sometimes and it's more challenging for some of us than for others. So it's a miracle whenever it happens. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you to talk about is what ways do the community, or could the community help in? It sounds like you have plenty of ongoing help, but I'm imagining there might be new needs that arise as time goes by. And so I did want to ask you to talk about what would you like the community to understand about what's still needed?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Homes.
everything that we've
Yes,
homes
that's right.
definitely. Everything that we've talked about is still ongoing needs as well, right? And so, and that's one thing to think about too, because if the same people are continuously doing a lot of these things all the time, that we need more people to step in. So we need more people to step in for, just helping to give rides places or whatever. We need more people to step in to help with different aspects of their daily lives in whatever way that they're able to help.
And funds,
yes,
honestly, fundraising, and for a number of reasons. Obviously, for their homes and the needs that go on, but the COVID relief funds have changed or ended, so their benefits have been dramatically reduced, and so that kind of fundraising or contributions of funds of any amount is always going to be necessary, and an important way we're very committed to them working toward independence, and they're taking major steps towards that. And it's a lot to start from absolutely nothing and grow to that point. So we need that help too.
And with the housing piece, looking forward to that too. And as plans materialize around that, bigger funds could also be sort of welcome. Local businesses or other, might be able to give, tax deductible donations of, larger amounts, right, to go towards these bigger projects. Also, things like cars, are needed as they're getting licenses and stuff like that. And where there's funds for cars, or some people might have, we have 2 cars, but only one of us drives now, and so it's just sitting here in the driveway. I mean, there could, who knows what people have available out there. And so that kind of thing.
But people might not
huge.
think.
They might not think about it. That this actually could have some use. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Could really, help somebody develop their independence. And
that's right.
So, well, so
and as we've mentioned, we are in the process of creating an entity so that this work will be ongoing and sustainable, and so there will also be roles to be involved, serve on the board of directors of this new entity as it's forming. So if people have experience in nonprofit governance or those particular issues of finance, fundraising, publicity, marketing, all of those issues. Will be seeking support from the community to serve in those roles as well.
Any and all skills
exactly.
will be put to extremely good use.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So if people are interested in any kind of volunteer role, from driving to medical appointments to serving on a board of directors or the forming organization, what should they do? Whom can they contact?
Any of us.
Any of our congregations.
The safest bet right now is the 4 churches involved, right? And so just contact them directly. There will hopefully before too long be this sort of centralized organization to be in touch with. But
and it should be noted that all of your churches have good websites, and so that would be a place to start.
Exactly.
To just St. Paul's website, Unitarian Universalist website, and Central Congregational. And does her organization? I know that's lay people.
West Newbury Congregational also has a website.
Okay.
So
all right. So there's always a way to make a connection.
Yes. And we're a team, so whomever is the easiest, we'll make sure that we all
If you get to one, you'll get to everybody.
That's right.
In other words, well, it's just so wonderful to hear about how things are going, and there's so much good news. I'm really excited and inspired to hear about, especially how the community has come together, and the inner fortitude. I guess that's a phrase my mother used to use. I know as I say it, it sounds a little old-fashioned, but it's true. Yes. The inner fortitude and the resiliency of the Afghan families that have resettled here and are finding their way to be part of the community and have already given back so much to the community. So that's all really wonderful. Before we sign off, though, I want to give each of you a chance to any last words that you have about either something that you've learned from the Afghan families that's been meaningful to you, or things that you'd like people in the community to understand better about the experience they're going through. So.
That's a great question. My gosh.
I saved it for the end.
Yes.
Central became involved because Father Jarred was aware of a family related to a family that his church was hosting. So we moved very quickly in response to that request, and we're just about at the 1 year mark of that family arriving late in the evening, getting a ride from their caseworker from the immigration service. And I met them at the church and had no idea. None of us knew who each other was, and none of us knew what we would be looking at together. And so these folks who arrived as strangers are now friends in
Wonderful.
so many different ways, and they
Wonderful.
have enriched our lives.
Yes, they sure have.
Yeah.
I think the world can be so overwhelming, and I guess what I would say is like just to do what's in front of us, and we'll never know. I mean, who knew, right? That this was going to happen, and so we have what we need right here, and we are making a difference together.
That's right.
And I would say for all of us to remember that. Thank you all, and keep doing that. Keep showing up for each other, because it makes the world a little more bearable, a little better.
Yeah. And I was going to say something similar. Well, first to say, one thing I just want to say is thank you to all the people who have stepped up and the volunteers. That it wouldn't be possible without that. And then the other thing was, yes, we have to do the good that's in front of us.
That's right.
And if we don't, so it's easy to think about how can we solve like the whole world problem for refugees or for everyone who needs housing or for everyone who needs support. And unfortunately, we can't do that.
Yeah.
I wish we could, but no one can do that. But what we all can do is the good that falls into our lap, right? The good that's right in front of us. And in fact, if we don't do the good that's right in front of us, we will never ever do any good at all.
Right.
In
That's
our life.
right.
And so
we never know.
And we never
where
know
it's
what that's
going to go.
what
You hear
it's
those
right.
stories all the time. How did massive changes happen? Well, it just started with an act, right? Someone doing the right thing, and then they say, "I had no idea," and then it leads to things.
Yeah.
Right. We're certainly transforming our own lives in these families in this community, and that means a lot.
Yeah.
It means everything,
It does
doesn't
mean
it?
everything.
Well, I'm glad I asked. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time to be on the morning show, and thank you for all the work that you're doing to make the world a better place, and for
Thank you,
sharing your
Mary.
wisdom with us. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you,
Thank
Mary,
you.
so much.
Good luck
Great
and
to
best
meet you.
wishes in your ongoing work. That's it for today, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 for the morning show. Until then, be well and reach out. All right, farewell.